Hello there. What is going on, everyone? We are going to talk about some games and crowdfunding and consider that as an option for some of today's topics and some of the games that are either A, no longer in circulation, or B, maybe could use an additional option. And it kind of goes back to the recent stuff with Armada and X-Wing, but also goes back to like old Fantasy Flight games days. There was a lot of talk about crowdfunding back in the early X-Wing days, especially when it comes to larger items, things that are maybe too big to or too risky to do with retail. And I really think it's something that a lot of companies should consider. I don't know if Asmodee is allowed to do those right now, so I don't know if that's something that we'll see with Armada or X-Wing or even Legion. I always thought that Legion would be a great option to consider crowdfunding, especially for larger things like an Imperial Walker, right? If you wanted to do something really big, maybe they don't know how many people would buy one. Maybe they don't know. Maybe it's too risky to produce something like that that's going to end up sitting on store shelves. Look at X-Wing and how many like Sea Rocks they had, and how many it's always tricky to try to produce enough of something that it's going to sell like perfectly. Ideally, you want it to like almost completely sell out, and maybe there's like one left on a shelf, right? I would imagine that you wanted everything to completely sell out and everybody to get exactly what they want every time. But that's impossible, right? It's impossible to do that. So that's one of the reasons why card games have such a hard problem. Like Star Wars Unlimited and Star Wars Destiny. Like when they first came out, there was like, how do we create enough that everybody gets what they want, and then there's enough for people to have a little left on shelves so people can go buy some, but then to do drafts and boosters and things like that. But not, we don't want to make so little that people can't get any product. We don't want so much that there's 5 cases sitting on a shelf that nobody's buying. Then it gives the appearance that the game is unpopular, and then people are unlikely to get into it because like, oh, nobody's playing this game. So that's the tricky part. Plus, our store is going to even want that much stuff on their shelves because shelf space is limited. And Kickstarter is sort of a way to do that. Some other companies have used Kickstarter as just a more like CMON has always sort of just used Kickstarter as a dedicated pre-order. And wouldn't that be interesting for stuff like Armada? I'll start with Armada because I think there's so many advantages for Armada. I think the things like the Architans, they would make some and then they would sell out instantly. Like, well, why not just put it up for like a dedicated pre-order? And like, oh, okay, we need 100,000 more Architans. Oh, actually, it turns out we need 120,000 because that many people wanted them, especially with the points reduction, right? And so they know exactly how many to make. It's and maybe you make like an extra 5%, so you have a couple extra for latecomers and things like that. But that would solve so many problems when trying to figure out how much. It also would solve a lot of problems for retailers not having to worry about having stuff on store shelves. Although it could create some problems if they decide to go only with that model. And I think, of course, the best option is sort of hybrid. X-Wing could have done this too for larger things that were a little more like large ships could have easily been like a pre-order Kickstarter crowdfunding thing. Since they weren't going to be needed in official tournament games, they would have just been used for specialty cases or homebrew scenarios or as cinematic experiences for the once in a while kind of game. I think that'd be a perfect opportunity, especially if you want to do something larger like a Nebulon or an Architans in X-Wing. Setting that up to be Gamefound or Kickstarter would have been brilliant because not everybody needs to have one of those. And then you could even open it, and then you can do fun things with it too. You can do a lot of fun things with it. I don't know, and if you guys are joining late, that's what we're talking about. We're just talking about the possibility of doing, doing crowdfunding for some of the games that we know and love, and why did FFG never do this? So there was an interesting video that was done by, I want to say Shut Up and Sit Down, when they were making Twilight Imperium 4th edition, and they did like a whole documentary on it. It's fascinating. But Christian Peterson was talking to like Andrew Navarro a lot about like how they were going to do Twilight Imperium, and he wanted to crowdfund it. There was the fear that the box was going to be way too big and it was too big to fit on store shelves, and that crowdfunding might have been the only option. So I know that is something they always considered, but they weren't able to do. And I don't know if that had to do with the merger with or the takeover of Asmodee of Fantasy Flight Games, or if it was a licensing thing for some of the other games. It wouldn't have been a licensing thing for Twilight Imperium, since that's their own property, you know. So it's very interesting. What's going on, J Bone? He says, I think it'd be a great idea. As someone who recently got into Armada, and I've spent over $1,000 to getting my Rebel and Imperial fleets in the last month. Yes, so honestly, it's a great idea. Now, how could they do that now? Well, it's interesting because I mentioned Christian Peterson. He was the founder of Fantasy Flight Games, creator of Twilight Imperium, Star Wars X-Wing, Armada, Rebellion, a lot of these games. He's the mind behind all of it, although not necessarily like a game like designer and developer, but more of the mastermind. Like, hey, make like the Steve Jobs of this whole, I won't say this whole industry, but a big section of this industry, especially as it applies to plastic spaceships. So he ended up forming Ghost Galaxy, which is and a number of other companies. He's got a whole bunch. He's building another empire, but he was able to secure the rights to Keyforge, and he bought that from FFG. So Keyforge, FFG is just like, we can't do it. And there were other reasons too, like certain people quit and they realized, oh goodness, like you're the only person that knows how to make this game work, and you quit and you went to work for Christian Peterson, so we can't make this game work without you. So they end up selling the whole game to Christian Peterson. Now he is using Gamefound to get this game out there, to get this game across. Tommy Chapman says, 10 minutes ago, I bought an Armada core for $50 new. That's awesome. That's a great deal. It's a fantastic. Was it the original core set, the Empire versus Rebellion, or was it one of the Clone Wars core sets? Either one is a fantastic deal, and I'm happy for you, man. That's great. That's good stuff. Very good stuff. But yeah, so Christian Peterson obviously wanted to do this, and it shows that like the model works. There's been other companies, especially with a licensed game. Now, I think there's some fears with like how trying to get a war game. Yeah, no clone in price. Oh, okay, the classic one. Okay, cool. So where does this come in? What was I getting to? Oh yeah, so there's some fears. If I back a game on like Gamefound, is it gonna be big enough? Are there gonna be people playing it? Because if I'm not buying it at my local store, am I gonna have a place to meet up and play this with people? I think that's one of the big fears, is that a game that's on Kickstarter or a game that's on Gamefound, if it's a board game, it's fine because you don't need other people to own it. You just, a board game is a whole different thing. But if it's a miniatures, if it's a skirmish game, if it's a tabletop skirmish game, you kind of want a community to play against, unless you're just going to play on TTS or digitally online or something like that. But if we're trying to put ships on tables, from the thumbnail, right, the Onager right here. If we're trying to put ships on tables, we want other people that know the game, that own the game, that have their own fleets, and then we can meet up and play them. And if it goes straight to crowdfunding, there's always that risk that it might fail. So that's and so I'm going to bring up some other ones, and I think that's where Star Wars specifically has an advantage because of the IP being very large. It could totally work. However, I don't know if Lucasfilm won't let them. I wonder if Lucasfilm has some kind of ruling against crowdfunding with the license. I don't know. That's an interesting thing. J-Bone says, yeah, I got 2 starter packs for around the same price here. There's still some out, and not just on eBay. Yeah, William Murdy Jr., Robotech RPG Tactics. Enough said. I'm not familiar with that one, but did they go to crowdfunding as well? Perhaps. But there have been some successful games, skirmish games that have, started out on crowdfunding. Simon, great example. Oh, yes, they did. All right, cool. Simon did A Song of Ice and Fire. A Song of Ice and Fire, which, Game of Thrones, massively popular IP. That game actually did fairly well. It's still thriving to this day. You have tournaments. It has Adepticon tournaments and stuff. It has communities that play. Arguably not as big as, like GW's games or Star Wars Legion and things like that, but still big enough to have carved out its own foothold. They're not getting like updates every month. They're not getting new expansions constantly. It's like more of a yearly thing, I think. But it's a game that's supported. It's a game that's still going and seeing updates. So that's really cool. And I think that's sort of how it could work. Um, Tommy got into Star Wars tabletop with X-Wing around COVID time. Jay Bone says it would be difficult with the or it could be difficult with the Star Wars RP. Now, one way to do that, and an interesting thing that I think is to, since Star Wars and Armada are two different things, like the Armada game system could easily be adapted to a non-Star Wars IP if you just still followed all of the other blueprints. Like you just put different ships on there. It could even be adapted very well to a pirate game. But I would imagine that if Christian Peterson were to secure the rights to the Armada mechanics, whether it be like the dice and the maneuver tool and things like that, it wouldn't be hard for him to be like Star Force Armada on tabletop. And of course, we would all know that, oh, okay, this is they're relaunching Armada on Kickstarter, and that would be very exciting. So it'd be something to look out for and look into, and definitely consider pledging. I know that I'd be on board for that. Because I think the game system has proven itself to be fantastic. It doesn't necessarily need the Star Wars IP attached, although that was definitely a hook for a lot of people. And to be fair, that hook will still exist. It's still going to have that history of the Star Wars IP being attached to it. I think a lot of people would be open to it. I also am curious how that they would do something like that. A lot of times crowdfunding platforms have this history of sending out miniatures that are unpainted, but oftentimes assembled at least. So if you were to get, I'll use this as an example, Imperial ships, or maybe if it's not maybe it's not Star Wars, but I'll just say Star Wars for now. Let's say you were getting Imperial ships and they were all just in gray plastic. Well, that already looks pretty close. Maybe all you've got to do is throw a wash on there and then you're done, or so a little bit of like a little blue, or you don't have to because they still like it's faction specific coloring. You could do the same thing, make every faction their own color. Kind of like how they did, if you played Armada, the Clone Wars, the squadrons, all factions had their squadrons in a different color plastic. And I think that's a smart way to do things. Works for Twilight Imperium, works for a lot of games. So, yeah. What's going on, everybody? If you guys are just joining, we were talking about crowdfunding. We're talking about Star Wars Armada, Star Wars X-Wing. We're going back talking about Christian Peterson getting Keyforge and launching games off of crowdfunding that originally weren't launched on crowdfunding. There's a lot of history there, and I think it could be applied to other game. Is Christian still associated with Twilight Imperium? If so, that'd be a good universe. Associated is a loose term in this case. And technically, only because he created it, so his name is on it. But I don't think he has. I don't know if he gets like royalties from it. That's none of my. That's stuff I wouldn't know. It's an interesting question, though. I'm curious if he does. I would imagine, however, that part of selling to Asmodee at the time was that that they own everything. So I think that was it. It's and there's ways around that. There's other games that have done really well on Kickstarter and that have become now things that appear on shelves. You guys have seen, like behind me, like this train, the Cyberpunk stuff. Cyberpunk Combat Zone was started out on Kickstarter, and now it's on store shelves also, and still does Kickstarter, and also it does all three. And what I mean by all three is there's I think three main ways to get games. There's a company contacting distributors and having stuff show up on store shelves and that sort of way. Basically buying a game in a store. Then there's the Kickstarter method, which is crowdfunding. You buy now and get your game like in 2 years or something like that. And then there's the third option, which is direct from the manufacturer. And so like WizKids does a lot of this. The Monster Fight Club does that. Asmodee also does that. They have their own website. You can buy directly from them. They don't push that as much. And some other, different companies have different opinions on how much they really want to suggest, because they make a lot more money if you buy directly from them. It's somewhere in the ballpark of, I think, a distributor gets a game at like 10 to 20% of the cost, and then and so a game that costs $100, a distributor will pay $20 for, and then they'll sell it to the store for like $55 or something like that, and then the store sells it for $100. So everybody makes money along the way. So like the game may only cost $2 to actually manufacture, so the game company makes $18 off of that. Then the distributor makes $20, and then so on and so forth. But if you buy for that $100 game from the store's website themselves, then they make that $98 profit or what have you, as opposed to $18 profit. So they definitely want you to do that, but some companies would rather have their games on store shelves and kind of really push things that way, which has always been an interesting thing to me. I think it's part of like the industry and like this desire to kind of keep game stores alive and keep game stores thriving, and distributors offer a way to do that. But I mean, I would imagine that if I were a company, I would kind of follow WizKids' model a little bit. I would definitely still do the distributor thing, but I would strongly encourage people to order directly from me. Of course, that means if I had like a shipping room and a mail room and a warehouse and the ability to store that much stuff. And I think that's another aspect of it, is what kind of warehouse space do you have? Kickstarter eliminates all of those concerns because you don't have to worry about a warehouse. You only need a warehouse for like a month. When the trucks finally come in and then you have to deliver. And then the thing is, there's other companies that do all of that for you. There's a lot of companies that do all of that for you, so you don't have to do all of that. I missed some comments, so I'm going to come back and look at some of these. Let's see. Mrs. Quid 803 says, was reminded of this on their Discord. Have you seen Flick Fleet? I've seen a couple of it printed out. It looks really fun. I have seen some ads for it. It's not something that I am personally into. Dexterity games are cute, but I played a little bit of dexterity games like when my kids were younger, and they're getting older now to where like that's not really much of a thing for them anymore. That to me, and I've played some with friends too. It's not like I'm not saying dexterity games are for kids, but that's definitely one of the appeals. They can appeal to adults too. It's not something that I'm particularly into. Although I like the aspect of, hey, this is luck, and you could totally get lucky and win, especially if you don't want to have to think about your strategy too much. There's definitely some advantages to that. It's just not something that I'm super into, but I have seen it. It looked interesting. Let's see. J-Bone says, could they still have the same awesome ship models? They are amazing, and that's what I loved about Star Wars Ship. You're a Star Wars Ship nerd and watching your videos. Yeah. Well, it all depends if Lucasfilm would allow a license holder to be able to take a game to crowdfunding, whether it be Gamefound, Kickstarter, or a third party, because they have let some things go to crowdfunding before. And I'm looking at Hasbro for this. Have you ever seen HasLab? The big, like the Ghost, the giant, like the 3 3/4 inch scale stuff, but the Ghosts, and they did a Rancor, and those are kind of hit or miss. The Rancor didn't do very well. But a lot of that stuff does go to crowdfunding, but it's Hasbro, like HasLab's only thing. I think a way to do it would be Hasbro, which has the license to do board games and stuff like that. Hasbro would have to expand that license to allow them to do miniatures also, or maybe even they call something new. They call it toy games or something like that. And Hasbro somehow getting the license to do Armada and sending it to HasLab. And then you get like this massive, like, hey, the entire collection pledge, or the starter box pledge, or the Imperial pledge. They can have all of these different options. That could be really cool. Could also be dangerous because they could just take you for a ride. But I am of the mindset that these ships are worth a lot more than we have seen their MSRPs at. An Imperial Star Destroyer was like $50 for like the longest time, right? It was worth way more than that. And so at least compared to what the costs are to make it now and what people are willing to spend on. I mean, the fact that they're like hundreds and hundreds of dollars on eBay and stuff like that, I think you could easily have just charged $100 for a Star Destroyer, or even $130, and it would still be acceptable in enough people's eyes. Now, I will say that I wouldn't mind if they were gonna if they had to start over. If they had to say, look, we couldn't get the rights to Star Wars Armada, but we did have the rights to a Fleet Battles game, so we're going to make a new version. I would love to see them zoom it out a little bit. And instead of making Star Destroyers this big, make them like this big, kind of like Star Wars Rebellion, maybe a little bigger than that. But I'd want you to actually be able to field a whole Armada on a tabletop. And it would also be an extra bonus if you didn't need a 6x3, if you could do it on a 3x3. I think that would be even better. There's a lot of, granted, I love playing on a 6x3 or a 6x4. I love it. There's a ton of advantage of having a game that plays on a 3x3, and that's I said a lot of stores can support it. Tournaments can have a lot more people. You can have twice as many people, and a lot of times it can play twice as fast. So I would love to be able to get the Armada experience on a 3x3. And you know, I think as Star Trek Into the Unknown is kind of addressing this a little bit, as they come out with more ships, there can be more, you know, like epic battle scenarios and things like that. And I'm definitely because that has the capability to do all that and more. Although it does it in a different way. It does it in a different way. They're not the same. You know, it's not Star Trek Armada, but it can still scratch that itch for you. I think it's got the potential. It's got the potential to scratch that itch for you. Let's see. William Murdy says Steam Forge Games with War Machine has a majority of their models sold directly. They're trying to get a game. They're trying to get games back into game stores. Oh yeah, that's the way a lot of companies will do it. And there's pros and cons with that. But selling stuff directly, you can get more profit. You can also price things a little cheaper and still make more profit that way. You know, that's frankly, that's probably something that Asmodee should have done, is they could have just said, or like AMG could have just said, okay, look, X-Wing and Armada, we're not making enough profit off of these, so they're no longer going to be in stores. You can still get them. You just have to order directly from our website. They would have made like 4 times as much profit per box. I mean, what's the problem there? You know, like, again, I don't know. Maybe they just, and maybe it comes down to warehouse space. Maybe they don't want to have to do that much. I don't know, but I just don't know why. I don't know. There's a lot of I don't know whys, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they just didn't want to. It's going to be really interesting to me to see, you know, in a couple of years, if Atomic Mass Game announces a Starship game, I'm going to be like, I've got 3 questions. First off, who do you think you are? Second question is, how dare you? And third question is, where do you get off? You know, like just nonsense questions like that. That would be really funny to me. Hopefully they never do that. Mr. Oz would love to see a squad-based commander for Rebels. Oh, for Star Wars Armada. Yeah. Gosh, don't they already have? So it has been suggested that Maydeen fits that bill right now. I could also easily say that Dodonna does as well. I mean, they're not specifically like they don't do stuff, but that synergize especially well with squadrons. And I'm talking about the new Maydeen. So if you have not seen the updated Maydeen, you know, he now gives you the yaw without having to do the nav command. So he works exceedingly well in a squadron fleet that now is able to do squadron commands and still maneuver for free. So that's a cool thing. But I know what you mean. I feel like Rebels has so many. I feel like if anybody really needs a squad commander, it's the Separatists. Because they don't. I mean, granted, they did get some extra attention. They had some, you know, an officer change to work better with squads and things like that. So that's cool. But they really needed another commander. But yeah, yes, I agree, says J-Bone. Everyone is paying $200 for Imperial Star Destroyers. You can't tell me that would not be profitable. I agree with that. I agree. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense. It's astounding. I don't know. People will pay a lot of money for games that they love, you know? So it's crazy. People, there's a lot of money in this hobby. And the thing is, I think primarily because like tabletop miniatures gaming, like tends to appeal to more. It doesn't like appeal to teenagers as much. Although I think they think it's cool. I think the target audience is like the late 20s, 30s, 40s, and up. You know, people who typically have more disposable income. You know, and I like to just leave money on the table like that is strange to me, especially when you could go to Kickstarter. So, or Gamefound and things like that. Always found it very, very strange. So I don't know what they're thinking, but I mean, look, it's been done. It's been done before. And I wouldn't mind seeing an all new. Let me ask you this about an all new IP. Would you play something like X-Wing or Armada if it had a different, let's say it was developed kind of faithfully with like, I mean, maybe even by some of the old developers or whatever, but what if it had just a different theme? Like I'll use Armada with pirate ships, for example. What if they did a pirate ship game that was follow the same movement as Armada? You can still have squadrons that could be like little dragons and griffins and flying things, right? Um, you might have to tweak a few things. It might be you might not want like a too many dragons. It might be a little unrealistic depending on the world you're doing, I suppose. Um, but yeah, I could see like your ships being pirate ships, and because that's kind of how Armada plays. It feels a little bit like a pirate ship game. Um, I don't know if I mean, and you could have like a wizard on every ship that is doing shields. That's where your shields come from. And so instead of engineering, it's like magical. It's mana or something like that. So I like a fantasy pirate game. Like I could see that working, and you could. And the cool thing about that is you wouldn't be beholden to a specific licensor or IP. So if you're like, hey, these guys need, these guys need a ship that can cloak or go underwater or something like that. It doesn't matter if it exists in Star Wars or not. You can just make it because maybe the game balance says, hey, this is something that we need to add. How to Train Your Dragon Armada. Yeah, no, that could work. I don't think they have I think to make it work with Armada exactly as is, you would need magic because you'd need to have shields, and pirate ships don't have shields. And granted, yes, you have like damage. You could say like, oh, it's just we're repairing the planks and stuff like that. The problem is you wouldn't have redirect. You wouldn't be able to like transfer shields like from one side to another. What are we gonna like pull? We're gonna do damage to this side of the ship to fix that. So it makes I guess it could work, but it would make more sense, I think, if you put a little magic in there. Yeah, you need wizards for sure. Also, frankly, having wizards and not and we'll just say they're like defensive wizards. I would create a whole school or a whole like lore of like wizards of different disciplines. So like you'd have shield wizards on each ship. But there'd be you'd have a door open for lots of other, and maybe shield wizards are the most common, like defensive magic. They're the wizards that enable your defense tokens. They're the wizards that enable your shields. But there'd be offensive wizards too, and those would be the commanders or the officers or the weapons teams and stuff like that. And they'd be like a little more rare. That's why they're not automatically on every ship. But that would be really cool. And maybe you've got wizards that those are your black dice. No, that could be normal pirate. I mean, it just works. You have long range cannons, and then like you've got your grape shot and scatter shot for like close range and stuff like that. It just works. I think it just works. But yes, J Bone is like, yes, I'm in my 40s and I love Star Wars. Yeah, granted, Star Wars itself appeals to a wide variety of audiences. But as far as like the combination of Star Wars and these type of games, it's definitely appealing more to like original trilogy, and it's starting to appeal more to folks who like Clone Wars stuff too. But I think original trilogy is probably one of your best money makers for Star Wars, so I would definitely start there. Also because if you're just relaunching the game as is, there's less stuff that you can do for Clone Wars. There's fewer ships. I don't think I personally would be into it without the Star Wars ships. They are the best sci-fi ships design, and that's the biggest draw for me anyhow. Anyway, I understand that. Yeah. I like the game system, but the Star Wars is an additional draw that adds it's like having your favorite cake, but you don't have very much icing on it, and you want all the icing. And that's the Star Wars theme, is like the icing on the cake. Soltari Nagamuto, I hope I said that right, says, I love the concept of ship wizards. Makes me think of a sci-fi book. I read a fantasy author who used ship wizards in place of all the tech stuff, so he doesn't have the science chops to describe it well. Yeah, that's the other thing about like magic, is that it's a great excuse, because some science fiction writers that go heavily into the science, they have to get they either have to know a ton, or they have to consult with a lot of people to get all of that done. Not to say that wizards don't involve consulting, because you just have different things to consult about. I know Brandon Sanderson, with a lot of his stuff, he's got magic, but he also consults with people about tons of other things, from like mental illness to physical disabilities, and and to military command and leadership, and all kinds of different life lessons that to make his stories more believable and bring them to life, and it works great. But yes, but the science fiction stuff, there's a couple that have really blown me away with how deep they get into the science, and that's like The Martian. is a great option for that. And Andy Weir, he's a great author. And by the way, speaking of books, I'm gonna do a shout out to Andy Weir. There's a book called Project Hail Mary. I will suggest it, but I would also encourage you not to read the premise, because to me, a large chunk of my enjoyment came from being surprised, even in the opening chapters. And if you read the premise, it's going to ruin all of the opening chapters' surprise. And I thought that was one of the things that fascinated me most. And I know they're making a movie out of it, and I'm sure in the tradition of movies, the trailer is going to spoil the premise, because trailers sort of have to do that. But I bought this book on Audible and started just listening to it and fell in love from the very beginning, because at the very first page was just like a, whoa, what, like basically somebody wakes up and they don't know where they are or what's going on. They have heavy amnesia, and they have to start remembering where they are and what's happening. Okay. That's all you need to know. But a movie trailer is going to spoil so much, and the problem is every discovery is a huge reveal. And so it's a great book, but don't read anything about it. Just Project Hail Mary, write that down. Just check it out. Don't, just open it, start with page 1 and read nothing else about it. I think you'll absolutely love it. Great author who goes deep into the science. Also, some folks in my Discord suggested Into the Bobiverse. We Are Legion, We Are Bob. Great book, also very similar. I think it's an Audible exclusive, though. All right, let's see. Pedro Bronco says, just got into the stream, but wouldn't crowdfunding have to deal with licenses and other issues? Right. So that's one of the reasons we were talking about Wizards just recently, so it depends on when you joined. So one of the reasons they might not do this is that Star Wars might not let them go to crowdfunding. That's a possibility. And so what if the game engine itself were just applied to a different... Because Lucasfilm doesn't own the Armada game system. They just own the Star Wars property that's pasted on top of it. Because this game could work with pirate ships. It could work with any other generic science fiction universe. And we know that this is true because we've seen Asmodee, or Fantasy Flight at the time, license the X-Wing flight path system over to WizKids for Star Trek Attack Wing. So you can't tell me that Star Wars owns the flight path system and said, oh yeah, you can mix Star Wars and Star Trek, right? No, of course not. Although that would be really cool. That would be an awesome game. Yes, the Bobiverse books are excellent. Absolutely. I can't wait I think there's maybe one more. I think they're going to do one more. Either the last one just came out a couple of months ago. Or maybe it was last year. Yeah. Really good stuff. Let me read over some comments here. So he says, my favorite wizard, Soltari says, my favorite wizard from the series says that magic is basically getting into an argument with the laws of physics and winning. That sounds like something, that sounds like something that I would read in a Harry Dresden book. Dresden Files. Anybody here read Dresden Files? Amazing stuff. Pipic 12. AMG Asmodee is really missing on a lot of potential revenue. We should just spam their support channels demanding a reprint. I will never suggest doing that for a number of reasons. For one, they're not. It's not going to make a difference. I mean, you can send a message, but don't spam. Also, the person who's got to read all those inboxes messages isn't the one who's able to make a decision. You can let them know from time to time that there's things that you want to see happen, things like that. But to spam them, don't suggest it at all. I don't think it's a good idea. I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah. But that's my. I mean, do what you're gonna do, but I wouldn't recommend doing that at all. If Asmodee was at EA Games, it would happen like Dragon Age Veilguard. They don't care. Yeah, I've heard some things about that too. I never actually played the Dragon Age games. I've heard great things though. And then this one kind of like threw everything that you've done, because they all built off of each other. It's like, and then they just threw it all away and said, no, you know what? Everything you loved about this franchise, forget it. We're going to start a whole new game, but we're going to call it Dragon Age just as a sort of a bait and switch. I don't know. It's interesting to me. But yeah, that is definitely a thing. And that's one of the things that I loved about Fantasy Flight games. And it's funny to me because it feels like I know we had a lot of complaints. I know I would harp on FFG from time to time. Like, you guys aren't doing good enough, and it's taking too long for this, and there's more delays, and there was a misprint on this, and blah, 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 And I look back, and I'm like, boy, how good we had it. We didn't even know. Because they weren't so profits driven that it was figure out what game makes the most profits and then kill everything else and only make that one game that makes the most profits. Like, that's kind of where AMG is doing. That's why they had to drop X-Wing and Armada. And even from reprints. That's crazy to me. You have loyal fan bases. You know how hard it is to like break into a whole new fan base? Like, they got rid of all spaceship games completely. It's really, really, really frustrating. But yes. So that's let's see, J-Bone. Hey Crab, I have been the one harassing you about some new Armada ship ranking videos. What are your thoughts on doing this? I had to ask. I love your ship videos and your last rankings. No, I think I'd love to do that, but the problem is I don't want to do that right now, because everything's just changed. So if I were to give you ship rankings, it would probably be based on before the points update, and that doesn't do anybody any good. But to do it right now, it's going to require a lot of, I have to generate my opinions, and it takes time. I don't play Armada every day. I don't play Armada every week. I do play Armada at least once a month, but I'm not. I have other games, and I have a family and another job, and I have to make videos and stuff. So it's like, and I've got new games. We've got this coming up soon, right there. Yeah. So we're doing a lot of different things. So I've spread out a little bit. So it takes me a little bit more time to dive into stuff. And that's one of the reasons I'm so excited about this recent Armada change. Is this new update we got? It's massive. There's so much. Like, the Armada community has thrived, done really, really well, despite like hardly any updates over the past 4 years. Ever since the Clone Wars stuff came out, we've gotten virtually nothing. We ended up getting rapid reinforcements, which was a little bit. It was a little bit. And the stuff wasn't even like that popular. Like, how many Rebel Providences do you see? Not that many. How many Imperial Venators do you see? Not that many. Although I am using one in my next Armada battle report that patrons already have access to if you're at the A-Wing level or higher. A little plug for Patreon. If you guys are interested, there's links in the video description below. Love to have new patrons. We do giveaways. You can get early access to content, and it's an opportunity to maybe get your name in the credits that appear at the end of my weekly videos and all of that other cool stuff. So that's my plug for that. And plus, there's also Discord roles. I mean, you can jump on our Discord as well, if you want to do that. But going back to what was I talking about? Ranking ships. So I've got to play. But we've done so well with only like Rapid Reinforcements 1, which was really very, very little, and then Rapid Reinforcements 2, which had a little bit of stuff. Like, again, not too many things that were like, oh my gosh, this is now ultimate. Like, I think Officer Price was like one of the biggest things that was, got seen a lot. There were some squadrons that were very popular, like Hera and the X-Wing was very popular, and there was a couple of things from that. But you could probably count on one hand between both Rapid Reinforcement the number of things that we got that were like really impactful. I'm not counting Anakin, or at least Anakin 1.0 for that. So the fact that now that we've got over 10 times that much stuff, maybe 20 times as many changes to the game, this could easily fuel us for the next 4 years. Before, I don't think, I'm sure by 4 years people will start to get a little cranky and like get stale. But this is easily at least another year or two of content, of keeping the game fresh and exciting, which is a really cool thing for me. And it's also one of those reasons why I hear like people, talking about like, oh, okay, we're about to launch our homebrew, right after Worlds or whatever. And I'm like, really? We just got all this stuff, and you want to like kind of throw it out the window and start playing your own version of the game. I'm like, I don't know. I'm of the mindset I want to enjoy this content and keep playing it, and keep playing Armada for as long as it still is Armada, and as long as we're all playing this by the same rule set, which is the official rule set, then it's still Armada. So that's exciting to me. I feel like we've got at least another year or two of that And then maybe after that point, I might start like playing around with homebrew a little bit. But then again, also maybe by that point there'll be maybe our Armada will get picked up by another company or something like that. So it's interesting. But yes, to go back to your question, like ranking ships, I think that's a great type of video to do. I don't know if I'll do it per faction or if I'll do it like overall or maybe both. I don't know if I'll include squadrons in there, because even though I don't like to use squadrons, I still could probably rank them on which ones are a pain in my ass. Pardon my language. I usually don't curse, but that's my one. That's my one for the month. But yeah, it's a possibility. All right. Let me see. Oh gosh, I missed a bunch of stuff. Sorry about that. If I missed your message, I apologize. One more plug. Super chats get highlighted. So if you have a question you just really want me to answer, that's one way to do it. All right. Let's see. Have you looked at Battlefront Valkyrie by Fat Dragon Games at all? No, I have never even heard of it. I've never heard of that. All right, let's see. Hey, Crab, Owen says, hey, Crab, love your videos. Thank you for doing what you do and keeping doing it. Oh, thank you. You have probably been asked this, but do you think X-Wing Armada could make a return? Another company maybe pick it up? Yeah, we talked about this a little bit, but I'll go into that a little more. Christian Peterson, got Keyforge from Fantasy Flight Games, and then launched that via Gamefound. And so it's possible that another company could pick up one of these games. The weird part is that X-Wing might be problematic. I think it could still be done, but it could be problematic. One big part of this is licensing. A licensed game, it's harder to sell a licensed game. Keyforge, it was easier because it was their own product they had made. They had invented that world. They could do something similar with Twilight Imperium or whatever. And actually, I think that's a great way to do it, is make Twilight Imperium Armada. Twilight Imperium Armada would be an awesome game. You already have the ships, you already have the designs for them. You just bump them up to Armada scale and make them just like Twilight Imperium. They're not pre-painted, but they're pre-colored. Each faction could have a different color of plastic. Easy. Super easy. And then people can paint them. I would paint them. I would love to. It'd be great. But you don't have to, because at least you're going to go up against, he's got the purple fleet, so that means he's playing these guys, So really cool stuff. Would love that. And there's so many factions and they're adding stuff all the time. Like go for it. That'd be awesome. But at the same time, I'd rather it be like Fantasy Flight doing it, not Atomic Mass Games doing it. I'd feel better about that. Or a different company altogether. Just I don't know. I'd prefer it if Will Schick stayed away from Starship Games after calling X-Wing what did he call it? A tower defense game. Yeah, that was, I don't know. That would be optimal for me. Maybe Z-Man or something like that. Or maybe they got some of the old crew. Whoa, we got a super chat from J-Bone 5. Thank you, man. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. I really appreciate it. That's you just made my day, brother. Thank you so much. But yeah, so hopefully that answers your question about the ship rankings. It'll be coming, but I want to give it some time. Because I've already played a little bit with some of the new changes. I think victories have definitely gone up, or at least the Vic 2 has gone up from where it is. But I will give you one spoiler. The bottom of the barrel is probably going to be the interdictor combat refit. That's probably going to be in the bottom of the barrel. Surprised it didn't get a points change. But maybe not too surprised because of the fact that it has the experimental retrofit. I could easily see them saying, messing around with this could open a can of worms. Although I mean, if anything, just make it 1 point cheaper than the other one or 2 points cheaper. I don't know. But, yeah. Does anyone even like AMG? Maybe exclusively MCP players? No, to be fair, just because I have issue and a lot of Armada and X-Wing players do, there's a lot of players that do genuinely like AMG. They have some cool people. Dallas Kemp is a really nice guy. He's awesome. He's a really nice guy. I don't know Will Pagani. Will Schick has always been really nice to me. I just have very many fundamental disagreements with him. but like they're nice people. They're good. They're good human beings. I just, as far as business tactics and acumen, I disagree with the direction of that company. So, so as far as the company itself, yeah, a lot of people do. There are a lot of people that like Shatterpoint, because some people like different things, and that's the way the gaming hobby works. That's why there's so many different types of games. There's some people that like, worker placement games. There's some people that like area control. There's some people that like Ameritrash, we call it, which are more dice driven with often with miniatures and very visually beautiful games that don't maybe require as much planning and strategy. Like games like Zombicide, right? Like fun, beer and pretzels games. I love all of that stuff. I like hidden role games, as a matter of fact. And that's one of the reasons I like Nemesis. I was showing off Nemesis earlier, because we have some more Nemesis content that I'm going to be working on, which is very cool. By the way, not a paid for announcement, but Nemesis is going back up for late pledge right now. So the Nemesis Retaliation, I'm just going to show you here. We've got a reprinted prototype for Nemesis Retaliation. And the Neo Flesh Cult expansion. So that's some new stuff that we're going to be looking at. I have to get an updated copy of the rule book, so I haven't. I've got some of the pieces out in front of me. Been kind of going over some of these and just taking a quick look. It looks cool though. They even sent me the little first player. It's like a platypus. They used to do a cat in space. This is a platypus in space. It's just super cool stuff. I really like Awakened Realms. They've made amazing games, and yeah. And let's see. So let's see what else is going on here. So that's all of that stuff. Again, thanks again, J-Bone, for the super chat. I appreciate you, brother. Let's see. What are we? I'm missing out on some comments here. What's going on, Peter? He says the Sarlacc pit for AMG. Wait, I don't know the context there. You're saying that so we were talking about crowdfunding. If they wanted to make a Sarlacc pit, that's a great option for crowdfunding. Or maybe you mean like, make them walk the plank, right, so to speak. I'm going to go ahead and go with the one that's a little more on topic, and that's if they wanted to do big stuff for Legion, for example, that's a great opportunity to use crowdfunding if they were allowed to. I think it'd be a cool option. You want to do an ATST. You want to do Jabba's Sail Barge, which already was on crowdfunding through HasLab. Again, I think if Hasbro were to get a bigger license from Lucasfilm to be able to do tabletop miniatures games, I think we could see a HasLab crowdfunding for all kinds of cool stuff. That would be really cool. You're stoked that I like Nemesis? I love Nemesis. Nemesis is one of my favorite board games ever. It has so much of what I love. It's got hand management, which is interesting. It's got some strategy. It's got some cooperation, which I don't always love, but it's partial co-op, semi-co-op, because it's got hidden roles, and you never know who's trying to kill who. Maybe you do want to kill somebody, but maybe you want to kill somebody else, so you and I can still work together. Maybe you want to kill everybody. I don't know. And it's got science fiction theme, and it's easy to explain the theme and the narrative of what's going on. But it's also got awesome miniatures too. Nemesis is a really cool game. Matter of fact, I think I have some of the first ever videos for Nemesis Lockdown, where we played with Martin from Awakened Realms. So very cool stuff. Yeah, I've been a fan of Nemesis and a supporter of Nemesis for a long time. One of my favorite ever games. I got to demo. The last time I was actually allowed to work for Asmodee was at, I want to say Gen Con 2019. And I was teaching Nemesis, and I had such a great time. I'll say this. I love having the opportunity to work for Asmodee and teach games at Gen Con and stuff like that. For one, it's a way to kind of cover the costs of actually going to a con, because it's expensive, and YouTube, I don't make a lot of money on YouTube. Super Chats help that, but no, I don't make a lot of money on YouTube. So it's just this is more of a hobby than a job for me, although I work on it as much as a job. And Patreon also helps out with that too. But the other thing is, going to cons is expensive, so working for a company does that. But also, I suffer from some pretty crazy anxiety. And when I go to a con, it can be very overwhelming. So I like knowing that I'm working for a company, because I'm like, okay, so for 6 hours during the day, or from 8 till 3, or whatever it's going to be, I know where I'm going to be and I know what I'm going to be doing. And so then I don't have to stress and worry about what I'm doing all day. And I love that. It's so weird, right? I don't know. I don't know if anybody else is like this, but when you go to a big convention, there's so much to see and do, and it's very easily to get overwhelmed. And me, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, because I paid to go, I saved up and I went to Gen Con like on my own without working, and it was expensive. It was very expensive. I want to say it was like $2,700 or something, or almost $3,000 by the end of after food and airline and hotel and everything. It was ridiculous, and I was like, never again am I going to do it like that. I'm gonna try to have something else to do when I'm there. So I prefer to try to work for a company if I can when I'm going, but I love knowing that I'm going to be teaching games, and this way I still get to talk to people, and also it's nice because if any of my viewers want to come by and say hi, they know where I'm going to be for most of the day, and so people can come by, shake hands, fist bump, whatever. Like I like just having that whole structure. I like the structured approach of like working at a booth or working for a company when I'm there, because then I can relax. And then the fun part of me gets to come out and I get to be like, whoa, let me tell you about this game, and like, that's, to me, that's like the perfect. So that's 2019 Gen Con was like my favorite con of all time. It was wonderful. The FFG crew was there. And it was a lot of friends, a lot of people had seen at other cons, and I knew what I was doing, and I got to do a couple of different things, but still doing Armada, but I got to do Nemesis that one day, and that was super fun. So, would Disney allow a crowdfunding approach? Okay, so Peter, we talked about this a little bit earlier. I don't know if the license that Asmodee has allows that. I don't think that it does. Either it doesn't, or Asmodee just chooses not to do that. However, Disney will allow crowdfunding because they have, but it might depend on what platform. They may not like Kickstarter specifically, although I'm pretty sure they're okay with that. And I'm pretty sure they're okay with Gamefound. Here's my evidence to tell you why. Hasbro has the Black Series, and they have all this. They have lots, and they also have board games. But Hasbro has put multiple things on HasLab, which is their crowdfunding. They've done Jabba's Sail Barge, they've done the Ghost, they try to Rancor, they do tons of Marvel stuff too. But other games have licenses through Disney, maybe not through Lucasfilm, but Lucasfilm has allowed it at least through HasLab. But Marvel stuff has been all over Kickstarter and Gamefound. Simon has done Marvel Zombies. They've done Marvel United. And that's been on Kickstarter and on Gamefound. So there have been multiple Marvel games on crowdfunding with no problem. I don't think I've ever seen a Star Wars specific game on Kickstarter or Gamefound, though. So that could just be that the licenses that Lucasfilm has handed out are a little bit different than the license that Marvel has handed out. Marvel seems to give out licenses like candy, and not so much for Lucasfilm. But yes, but I would love it. I think there's a couple of things there's some things I think that are more likely to happen than others. So if Lucasfilm opens up their licensing and lets other companies take this stuff to games like this to Kickstarter, I could see Christian Peterson getting it and doing Ghost Galaxy and going, the same way he did Keyforge. I could see Hasbro expanding their existing board game license to include games with miniatures, and then trying to do something on HasLab, like a Star Wars Armada clone or something like, or even a relaunch if they can secure the rights to that. I can also see Simon doing it. I could definitely see something like that happen. I think it could work. I'm going to go on another one, and maybe not crowdfunding for this one, but I'm going to go ahead and say I would love to see Games Workshop get a Star Wars license to see what they could do, considering that they make the best miniatures. And I would love to see what Games Workshop could do. I've heard rumors, I keep hearing rumors from time to time that they're going to take Battlefleet Gothic and relaunch that. I don't know if that's really going to happen, but is there any estimates on how large the Armada community is around the world? I don't know. I know we're doing pretty well. The Facebook group is growing really, really large. So if you guys like X-Wing and Armada, I don't know if you use Facebook or not. Nowadays, there's a lot of reasons that people don't want to use that stuff, so I can understand. I still use it for the channel, and I use it to send, I use it personally to, make sure that I can send pictures of the kids to the grandparents and things like that. I don't really use Twitter anymore, though. I think I posted on there a couple of times when I'm like trying to mass share something, but I try not to scroll it because it's become really, really a miserable place. But Facebook's less so, at least for me. Like whatever the algorithm sends to me is mostly all gaming stuff, Star Trek stuff, and Star Wars stuff, and things like that. So like at least like my feed on there has been really positive for the most part. So that's one of the reasons I still use that. But we have a really big Facebook group for Armada. I started a new group called Tabletop Starships because I wanted to be able to talk about more than just Armada in the Armada group. And like there was other people, like there were some people sharing stuff for Star Trek Into the Unknown, and they were sharing that as like the admin of the Armada group. I'm like, look, I love it too. But unless you're doing like a comparison to Armada, or you're talking about Armada in the same post, if you're just saying, hey, I just bought the core set for this other game, I'm like, okay, well, this is an Armada group. I'm sorry, I gotta, I'm trying to keep the group on topic. There's plenty to talk about. So I made a whole nother group called that. So if you guys are interested, you can Google Tabletop Starships. It's got like a pink thing. There is another group that's very similar, but it's a private group, and I don't usually like to join private groups because I don't know what's going on in there. You end up getting in and find out there's a whole bunch of political stuff, and I don't know. I've got no idea. So I just wanted it to be, I wanted it to be an open group. So, so you guys can check that out if you want. I don't have a link to it in the description below right now, but I'll link it later if you want. Let's see. But anyway, the Armada group's like I think we're over 10,000, so it's going really well. So that's good, and that's just Facebook. That's just one demographic of people that play. That doesn't account for like kitchen table players and stuff like that. But the game has been hugely popular. It was one of the top games in the world for a while. X-Wing was like the top game for a while. It was outselling 40K. So these games have a lot of recognizability. I think Armada, if you could do it again, I'd just make it a little smaller, make it a little closer to X-Wing size for the ships, and be able to field a lot more. X-Wing plays on a 3x3, and you can have a lot more ships per typical game than you can have with Armada. I would have done something kind of like that. Kind of like how Star Trek Into the Unknown is doing it, honestly. I'm really excited. And next week, we should be getting some new Star Trek stuff. So that's also really cool. Yeah. Battlefleet Gothic coming back would be a dream come true. Yeah, that would be really cool. What's X-Wing Alliance up to with the new pilots? Is it going to lead to ship packs? I don't know. I know that I've seen that X-Wing Alliance has been releasing some, the standard loadouts or whatever. I'm not really inclined to, like, I wish them well. I'm just not really inclined to play that version. I don't really like, AMG's new rule set. I think X-Wing Legacy is more interesting to me because they're like the 2.0. Like they're saying, no, we're not going to play by AMG's rules. We're going to play by FFG's rules. And so I like that one a lot better. But I'm not saying that, I'm not recommending either one of them. I think, because I don't even have my X-Wing stuff anymore. So I'm not playing X-Wing anymore. So yeah, I kept the miniatures because they're super cool, and that was part of the deal I made with myself when I got into the game. I'm like, I'm always gonna have these plastic starships, even if I stop playing the game. So I kept all my starships. I just throw out all the cardboard and stuff, so I can't play the game anymore. Let's see. What's Star Wars, Star Trek, but I think a Stargate Armada would be amazing. Interesting. I never really got too heavy into Stargate. I know a lot of people have said that about Battlestar Galactica. It would be a cool one. GW would triple the price and release new editions every few years, possibly. And here's why I don't think that's a problem. I talked about this. I'm going to bring up something, a GW versus Asmodee sort of comparison. And you're going to hear some beeping in the background because the dryer just went off. and I film in the garage. All right, so um, here's what's going on. Once that beeping stops, I'll be able to gather my thoughts. This is the anxiety kicking in. I'm like, oh my gosh, we got freaking beeping on. All right, let's see, Farscape Armada. Oh yeah, I know that recall. All right, good. Beeping's done. I know I can think straight. It's weird. So I play Warhammer Age of Sigmar, and I love it. It's one of my favorite games right now. It's wonderful, and the game system is cool. The miniatures are incredible, and to me, it's like I think the hobbying aspect is even more important than actual gameplay. Like when I show up to play a game, it's like show and tell. Like, here's my army. Look how cool they look. Oh, I'm gonna take pictures of them. I don't care if I win or lose. I just want to get the painted miniatures on the table. It's like, now granted, I'd still try to play tactically, but I love the game. So when they released fourth edition for Age of Sigmar, I was like, oh, how is this going to be? How hard is it going to be? Is it, how much am I going to lose? And yet, it wasn't that big of a deal. I had to buy a new codex, for my army, and I ended up picking up like some new armies too. Started playing ogres, so I had to buy a rule book for each one of those. So there is that, like, the whole, you need to buy the new book, but the thing is, you don't really need to, because they released everything for free. So I didn't have to spend a cent. I could still just play with everything that they gave us for free. But then the book is optional, and if you want the extra conveniences of being able to use the Games Workshop app, then you have to have a code that came with the book and stuff like that. So I ended up doing that for the convenience, but I didn't have to. So there is that. And some people really like the books. The books also are nice books too. They're beautiful books, and they have a lot of lore and art and stuff like that in them. So like there's cool stuff in the books on top of all the other stuff. But you don't have to buy the books. You can still play without them. So I don't really mind a new edition every 3 years. I actually welcome it. I look forward, and we've only had fourth edition for like a year or less than a year now, and I'm already like, okay, cool. I can't wait for fifth edition. But I'm gonna enjoy fourth edition for as long as it's here, because for the most part, as far as the product I have, nothing changes. I still use all my stuff. I did have a couple of miniatures that were switched over to Legacy that I'm not going to be able to use anymore if I wanted to play in a tournament or whatever. So I just put those in another box. I'm like, that's fine. I've got plenty of Stormcast Eternals. A lot of Stormcast got kind of pushed away. But they still give you rules. You can still use those. You didn't really lose much of anything. So I thought it was pretty cool. But I don't mind if GW does these things, because I don't know if it's because, but like I feel like I hold AMG to a different standard than I do to GW. I don't mind paying more, and I was trying to figure out why. I think it's because of a couple of reasons. One, Star Wars isn't involved, so GW, it's their own IP. So I'm like, you can do whatever you want with it. It's your stuff. You want to make a guy that kind of, whereas at Star Wars, sometimes people are like, hey, that breaks canon. That shouldn't work that way. Why does the Snow Troopers not get a bonus in snow, or something like that? I mean, I just made that example up, but like, there's that analytical level. But there's also a different thing with AMG in that, like, I had a lot of friends at Fantasy Flight Games that lost their jobs because of the Will Schick and AMG kind of takeover stuff. So that situation kind of makes me a little more critical of them, and that's my own. And I admit that's that maybe not isn't a good reason to be as critical for a game company. But I just think, I don't know, and it's not just that. That's just a part of it. And I have also other things where when I've done interviews with AMG and they've like lied, during my interview, like to my face on an interview. I don't really like being lied to, especially in a video that I'm putting out there, and it's stuff that I found out was lies after the fact. It's really frustrating to me. I don't like people lying to me during an interview and when it's going out on my channel. So I'm a little annoyed with stuff like that. And there's a lot. There's a lot of things. The other thing is that like GW's stuff is just better quality. It's like really, they're amazing miniatures. So I think they're worth a little bit more. And frankly, you say GW would charge triple. Honestly, their prices are very similar now. Like, and like Legion's new stuff costs the same as you would spend for an AMG kit or a GW kit, you know. So and GW kit's better. So that's part of that's part of all of it. I assume if I play GW games long enough, I'll eventually develop some kind of animosity. But also because Age of Sigmar is a relatively newer game for me, it's not as big a deal. I don't have as many years invested in it where I get like super sensitive if they make a change. I'm just like, all right, they made a change. All right, I'll have to adapt, you know. But I really love going through it. I love the learning process. I love GW's system for Age of Sigmar. It makes me actually want to consider 40K, you know. So maybe that'll happen at some point. I don't know. Andrew says, was the FAQ for Into the Unknown the thing you thought was coming out next week? There may be more than that. I don't think the FAQ is coming out next week. I think that's a little bit farther out. But I think I'll try to be plainly without trying to reveal too much. I think that we will see something from WizKids related to Star Trek Into the Unknown next week. Possibly next week. Again, this could get pushed. It may not be new product announcement X. It may not be the FAQ, but it may be like a community thing. Like, hey guys, we've heard your questions, and something kind of like that. That it may be something as simple as that. So I'm not sure exactly what's coming. That's why I think there's a chance, a pretty good chance, in fact, that as early as next week we'll be hearing some new things about Star Trek Into the Unknown from WizKids. That's about as much as I can say. If you want better guesses as to what that might be, you can check out my video where I talked about all of the different rumors and the different names of expansions and what might be in them and all of that other stuff. So, yeah, pretty cool stuff. All right. The whole AMG Mos Eisley battles says, or Barflies rather, says, I think the whole AMG situation is like a messy breakup and separation, just too many feelings all tangled up. That's an aspect of it, for sure. There is an aspect of that. And it's fueled by, a lot of emotion. It's fueled by, things where they've said, again, like the whole X-Wing is a tower defense game. And if you don't like it, I'm sorry, I don't care. Like all that kind of stuff. I don't think he actually said I don't care, but his body language said it. So, there's stuff like that. There's the ways that they've kind of addressed the community have been very poor. And that's one of the reasons I worry about Legion. I know that they have a roadmap for Legion and they have like all these plans of keeping Legion going, but I also have it on pretty good authority that they're only keeping Legion going because Asmodee has mandated that they have to do it. And I get really nervous when a game company is like, oh, all right, we're only going to do the bare minimum that we have to do. And you can see that mentality when you see them post Marvel Crisis Protocol, Shatterpoint, MCP, Shatterpoint, MCP, Shatterpoint, MCP, Shatterpoint, Shatterpoint, Legion, MCP, Shatterpoint, MCP, Shatterpoint, MCP, Shatterpoint. Like that's the way that they're posting. It's like in a week, you'll get one Legion post and 20 of Shatterpoint and Legion and MCP. And it's, I don't know. That was the same way that they were doing the bare minimum for X-Wing and Armada too. So I see all of these things, and then some people get it like, oh, you're just doom and glooming, you're doom posting or whatever. I'm like, maybe I am, but I've been right. I've been right every time. So hope I'm wrong this time. All right, well, that's gonna do it. I don't know if I've been right every time. I like to say I've been right every time. I'm sure there's been some things that I've been wrong about. I'm sure there's been something like Gungans were supposed to come out. They were supposed to be announced. And they kind of did. They kind of did, right? Like they're in the rule book. Like it was like a soft announcement. Gungans are, I don't know. I want to be able to enjoy Legion more. I don't really like what AMG's been doing with Legion. I would love to see another company like take over and relaunch it on Kickstarter and stuff. I don't know. I'd feel better about it. I'd feel better about just covering whatever, because I could at least trust what they were saying, All right, well, that's going to do it. I'm going to wrap this one up. Oh, my gosh, J-Bone, what is going on, man? We got a massive super chat from J-Bone. Dude, that's incredible. I really appreciate you, man. That's you blowing me away over here. Mind blown. Thank you so much, brother. Um, yeah, that's. All right, I'm gonna have to prioritize the ship ranking video, I think. Jonathan Spangberg says, "What stinks is I got into Star Wars Armada last year, and now the game pieces are stupid expensive. My wife bought me the core set for Christmas." Uh, yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff on Etsy that you can get. There's a lot of like cardboard and 3D printed ships and stuff like that. Got to run, Crab. Keep up the great work, and thanks from JBone5. Dude, thank you so much. I really appreciate the support, and it means a lot to me, man. Thank you so much. Um, but yeah, I get it that like Armada's like running out of stuff. If you get, and it stinks if you're not like a 3D printer, but Etsy has a lot of that stuff. You can get a lot of stuff for Armada on Etsy. Um, and I've got a dice pack that I've been meaning to show off, that so people making dice, and seen people making like everything else that you need for Armada. But if you got a core set, you've got most of what you need, so that's a very good thing. Um, but like, and I've been trying to do some videos on like how to paint. Like Imperial ships are kind of easy. You just paint them gray, and then you're 90% done. You could even stop there. Paint them gray, and then put a little blue in the engine holes, and you're done, right? You can do a little more if you want to. But yeah. All right. Aaron, I'll sub to you now. Awesome. Thank you. I wish sometimes I wish that YouTube had all the little bells and whistles that Twitch does. So if I get a new sub, I can be like, oh my God, we got a new sub, and all that good stuff. I have to kind of do it manually when I see like super chats and things like that come across. So it's pretty awesome. All right. Well, I'm gonna wrap things up, and I'm gonna get some lunch, and or maybe early dinner. I don't know. It's 3 o'clock. I have not eaten all day, and it's 3 o'clock. I need to probably eat something. So I'm going to go in search of food. May the odds be ever in my favor. To everybody else watching, to all those super chats and to patrons, I want to thank you guys so much for continuing to help this channel and keep it afloat. And I will talk to you guys later. Make sure you check links in the description below. You can get on our Discord, other social media links, Instagram. I've been trying to post a lot more pictures and cool stuff like that. We've got a lot of cool things we're going to have pictures of coming up soon, too. So I'd love to share stuff on there. I will talk to you later. May the force be with you. Live long and prosper. Be excellent to each other. Party on, dudes. So say we all. And always wash your socks. See ya.